Hello, guys. I hope everyone is doing great and staying safe. I welcome all of you to the second webinar in our short course on artificial lift technology. I am Hassan Aleem from Pakistan, and currently I am enrolled as a master's geoscience student in China University of Petroleum. I will be moderating this session today. Our guest and speaker is Dr. Muhammad Gharib. Dr. Muhammad Gharib has done PhD in petroleum engineering with specialization in artificial lift and production engineering and operation. Dr. Gharib is petroleum engineering staff member in the Future University in Egypt. Dr. Gharib has over 34 years of experience in oil and gas operations, business and management, sales and teaching. Dr. Gharib has remained president, general manager and director for various system and operation companies internationally. For a few years, Dr. Gharib has been actively engaged in practical industry training in different countries, including Canada, US, and the Far East. Dr. Gharib was also the president and membership chairperson for the SPE Egyptian section. He has published and presented 55 technical papers, and for 2011 and for this year, Dr. Gharib is the recipient of the SPE Regional Technical Award in Production and Operations. So let's warmly welcome Dr. Muhammad Gharib. Before the session starts, please note few important tips. For your questions, use the Q&A section. Don't write the question in the chat, and join the Google Classroom through the code shared on our Facebook page if you have not joined so far. Without any more delay, I request Dr. Muhammad Gharib to begin the lecture. Dr. Gharib, the session is over to you.
Thank you, Hassan. Thanks very much. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I will start just to continue what we are started last session about artificial lift technology. And we mentioned before what's important of artificial lift technology and what is artificial lift and why we need artificial lift. And last webinar, we started with the reciprocating road lift system. And we said that why we start with a reciprocating road lift system, because the majority of the worlds worldwide are running with road lift system. And as we mentioned before, we have several types of artificial lift, either mechanical assist, while we are running some device downhole, mechanical device is running as a bumping condition, bumping assist to lift fluids by creating some pressure, delta B, generated pressure, or just gas assist using the gas, either the gas formation produced gas or outsourced gas, different type of gas, as we will see. We'll explain later on, like natural gas, foam, or just plunger assist gas, and so on. And we already started to talk about road lift system, and for the road lift system, we cover different things. I would like just to review quickly what we already talked about the last session about road lift system and what it is. We said that the road lift system is a positive displacement artificial lift pumping system. It's a completely mechanical artificial lift pumping system. Okay, that's all the system in the mechanicals. They have four main components. Start from downhole pumps, sucker rod string, pumping units, and prime movers. These are the main components. It's make like a chain. If one of these components not working, the rest will not work. How is downhole pumps work? And what is a downhole pumps? We said the downhole pumps is a reciprocating positive displacement. The main component of downhole pumps is two main valves, one-way valves, check valve, non-return valve. The two valves, one of them called standing valve, second called the traveling valve, because traveling up and down. The valve opened by delta B. When you have delta B across the valve, the pressure will be higher and below the valve than the top of the valve will be open and closed by change the direction of flow. Going up, it's known the upstroke. Going down is known as the downstroke. While we are going up, traveling valve, this one is closed and displace all the fluid above the plunger, this one to inside the tubing. Going down, traveling valve is open and displaced all the fluid below the traveling valve to above the traveling valve. While we are going up, standing valve is open and fluid from formations is entering the pump to fill this gap and so on. This is the cycle of the pump. How the pump is running like this, who just provide this is reciprocating motion up and down. The reciprocating motion up or down for this pump usually is provided by the pumping unit, but the pumping unit has a surface. What's transfer this reciprocating from surface to downhole pumps? It is a rod string. The sucker rod string. Sucker rod string, it's just a mechanical link between pumping units and the downhole pumps. It's just transfers the reciprocating motion of the pumping units to the downhole pumps, just to let the downhole pumps work in this direction, going up and down, up and down, up and down. It's called one cycle. It's stroke per minute, one stroke per minute. It's one cycle like up and down. Generally speaking, units can run from one stroke per minute and practically wise up to 10, 12, it's okay. More than that, we start to be, just a little bit worried about it, unless for shallow wells and so on. For deep wells will be a slow speed. We'll see later on while we are analyzing the bounds and so on. We are talking about different type of downhole pumps, different type of rod string and so on. And one of the main type of rod string that's important really currently, especially in the current environment and especially with the new technology, what we call continuous sucker rod. The sucker rod, which are main function of its transfer, the reciprocating motion from surface units to downhole pumps. The general type of rods is a jointed rods. Rods, just one joint, depend on the type of the rod, fiberglass, steel, sucker rod, solid rods, or hollow rods, connecting to each other by coupling like this, and so on. But with updated technology and change the geometry of the wells to horizontal wells, deviated wells, high duplex severity wells, and so on, then it's coming in need for the rod just to work smooth in the wells. Because the roads going up and down, there is a potential of these roads, like especially coupling and so on, to wear against tubing earth. And this road will be a little bit stiff, solid, Any bending, small bending for these roads, the road can be potential for failures. And so for that reason, the manufacturing start to introduce to the market since more than 30, 40 years, what we call continuous sucker rod. Currently, really, a very high number of wells is running with a continuous sucker rod. What is a continuous sucker rod? Continuous sucker rod, instead to have the rod solid bar like this, you have the rod coming in a reels like this. It's a big reel, it's not small, it's a big reel. Usually it's coming in the big reels like this. Instead to connect the joint up plus joint, because usually in a standard sucker rod string, you have two lengths of sucker rod string, either 25 feet or 30 feet. Each 25 feet or 30 feet, you have a coupling like this. But for continuous rod, you have no coupling. You have only one joint of rod from top to the bottom, unless you are used table rod and so on. And we'll see later on about the difference on this one. What's the benefit of continuous rod? Why we need a continuous rod and so on? What's the benefit? Usually the core rod, this reel, this is just a small reel. Usually it's come in a big reels like this, and transfers to the wells. Yes, continuous rod have a lot of advantage, we'll see. But meanwhile, operational, it's not an easy, It's not an easy like a standard jointed sucker rod. It's required a special rig. If you look down home, it's a special condition, special rig, special tools here just to push this rod inside the well. Usually this rod is running inside the well by its weight, hanging in the elevator and connecting joint to the other and run in the well. But here, the joint connecting to that wheel. How you take the rod from that wheel to the well, then you need some injector like this. Special surface equipment. If it's not in the country or in the field, it's not an easy to use a continuous sucker rods and so on. And also, just this is jointed sucker rod. You have jointed here, and jointed here, and jointed. In case you have a problem downhole, you can make like a back off, you can disconnect the rod from here or from here. Depending on the operation, how to do this, a special operation. in order to do that. But what if you have a problem with the road here and the road is come stuck? Then for this one, start the manufacturer and say, okay, let us to have a special downhole equipment. It start to be essential. Some people say optional, but for me, it's not an option. In case you have a problem with the roads downhole or the pump, if the pump comes stuck in the well, how you pull that? Usually for this type of road, it's as I said, you make a back off, either you can back off from here, and you can start to go. But here, there is no joint, no coupling. Then you have what we call at the bottom, just above the pump, have what we call a shear coupling. In case you have a problem, you can apply a certain load, certain technique on that. Then you shear, you dismantle. This is coupling to two, and then you can pull easy the rod string and up to the out of the well and so on. This is a conventional sucker rod. Really try to pay more attention about continuous sucker rod. The market start to use more and more continuous sucker rod. Why the market start to use more and more continuous sucker rod? Then sucker rod, remember, continuous sucker rod is much more expensive than the standard rod. Continuous sucker rod, it's required a special rig. But in several cases, in different area, different environment, I need to use a continuous sucker rod. And with the long run, will save a lot of money. The operation will save a lot of money. Why? Because rod string have only, as I said, continuous rod string have only two connections. One in the top, one in the bottom. While the other jointed rod string have connection either each 25 feet or 30 feet. If you have the well was about 2,000 or plus feet, 2,000 meter or just 6,000 feet, then we need more than 250 or 240, 220 joints of sucker rod coupling and so on. But for continuous sucker rod, only two joints. One connection is the top to the polish rod, one connection to the bottom, either to the pump or to the sinker bar. What else? If we said that, if you remember, the sucker rod is reciprocating, going up and down. The well is not exactly vertical. It's not an easy found well is 100% vertical. For sure, there's some deviation in the wells. Up to a certain deviation, this type of roads can work very well. But what for a deviated wells? Well is deviated with different type, the angle and so on. While we are going up and down, usually the roads is contacting the wall of the tubing. If you are running the well, in this case, like in this condition, and you have the roads in the lower sides like this, and assume that this load at a certain depth, and the load on this road, for example, 100 pounds. Then the 100 pounds, the road, for example, this road is 1 inch. The coupling outside the enter of this road almost more than 2 inches to 116 or a little bit to 316, depend, or 2 inches, depends on the size. Then most of the contacts, if you have size, this will be in these two coupling. Then the side load here will be on these two couplings. Each coupling side loads is pushing against the wall of the tubing with about 50 pounds. Some people say, okay, but I can use a rod guide. Rod guide, that means like a centralizer, here and here and here, here and here. How many centralizer you are installed for the well? 5, 6, 8, 10. Normally, people, for example, is put 5 rod guides. Even if you are put 5 rod guides, plus these two joints, usually the rod guide is bigger than the coupling, then you're divided your 100 pounds to the 5 rod guides, and each rod guide is pushing against the tubing wall was about 20 pounds. What about the rod string, the continuous rod string like this one, what we call core rod, continuous rod string, endless rod? Each manufacturer gave a different name for this. Some people say continuous rod, some others say core rod, some others say bore rod, some others say endless rods, and so on, depends on the manufacturing and so on. But however, at the end, all have the same configuration and so on. For this one, all this 100 pounds will be distributed over the long area. Assume this from here to here is 25 feet. Then 100 divided by 25 feet is only £4 for each point. If this is, for each feet, but usually you are divided over even the feet and so on, then the side load will be very low. What advantage I can gain from this one? I can gain more running life for my rods and my tubing, because the friction between coupling and the tubing is creating a damage for the coupling, creating a damage for the tubing. But when I start to reduce that, then, for example, here, if the running life of the tubing and rod, for example, 6 months, here can be 10 times or more running life. Then you see how much you can save at the operation, because artificial lift is economics. Artificial lift, you need to run the well for the life of the well. You need to run the well with the lowest possible lifting cost. Each barrel you lift from the well, you pay a certain amount of dollar to lift this float. Then I need my system to run as long as possible. When the system have some failure or operation, I need to stop the well, I need to bring the surface rig, I need to pull out the downhole, I need to replace downhole equipment, I need to replace the damaged equipment. Even there is very important subject here is the safety aspects. Because each time the rig or the operation going to the well, there is some hazard, safety hazard. Someone can get injury, someone can get whatever, problem and so on for the people and for the equipment. Then you are saving even, as a safety point of view, using continuous rod will save a lot of things for them. Not only that, it's also using continuous rod is allow you for large annular space. What is annular space? It's the space between the rod string and the inside diameter of the tubing. But the rod string itself, it's okay because they have the same size like the core rod. But the problem at the coupling and the opposite of the rod, the coupling here, for example, as I said, the coupling of just 1 inch rod is about 2/16 up to 2 inches inside. The inside diameter for tubing, for example, if I use 278 inch tubing, the inside diameter of this tubing 2.44. Then how much clearance will be between the rod and the tubing, how much is the clearance here, between the rods, the coupling here, and the tubing. It will be very low clearance, You have a lot of problems, this very low clearance. First of all, when the clearance is increased, you are minimizing flow pressure loss, because the flow is passed between rod and tubing. And if the clearance is low, then you have high pressure loss. This high pressure losses have a very bad impact when increasing the bottom hole pressure. Because remember, the bottom hole pressure, the discharge pressure over the pump, it is the hydrostatic head of the fluid from the pump to the surface, plus the wellhead pressure, plus pressure loss. And the pressure loss function for the flow rates and the area while the fluids flow, and the fluid properties for sure. But if the flow areas increase, the pressure loss increase. When the pressure loss is increased, then creating more pressure over the plunger. More pressure over the plunger, that means more load over the plunger. More load over the plunger means more load over the load of the rod, more load over the pumping unit, more load over the motor. Then the lifting cost will be high. The total efficiency of my system will be a very high and so on, Also, there is no coupling, what you call piston effect. The coupling making like a piston while going downstroke, and the downstroke, the coupling making like a piston effect and restrict just the rod to run smoothly, especially for heavy crude oil. For heavy crude oil, this is a very big problem, either minimizing pressure loss and piston effect. Pressure loss for heavy crude oil, usually most of software, sizing of road system software, it's not considered that. Then you need for yourself when you are design to put in your mind this and to start to have some precautions, some more safety factors, some more calculations about that in order to avoid. I saw some design, some people run design for heavy crude oil. It's similar like a design for light crude oil. Only the consideration is the weight of the fluid, but they are ignored and neglecting the pressure loss between coupling and the tubing. And this, when we run the system, we found the load is very high, and so on. This is really why I use continuous load. Not only that, this is just as general. There is a lot of benefits for continuous load. But on the other side of the continuous load, cost is high, operation, it's not an easy, it's required a special wellhead rig to run the continuous load. And also in case of failure, one of the problems of the rod strength, in case of failure for this sucker rod, for example, if this rod is broken, I can run a fishing operation, and pull all that, and then I can replace the joint which is have a problem, and run another new one. But in case I have problem with a continuous rod, it's the rod's broken here or there, then you need to run also a special tool to fish the rods, the continuous rod, but there is no coupling to connect. Then you need to have a special welding machine, small machine. Usually you can find this with a rig, with a continuous rod not running leg. There is a machine can be welded that, but usually the weld is a weak point. What else for if I want to run a tapered rod string? Because usually I run tapered rod string to reduce the weight of my total rods, For this type of jointed rod, easy just to use a crossover coupling here, and I can change the size here. For the continuous rod, then I need to weld it. Either to weld as all sides, or it's come from factory, it's welded at a certain depth. Then the welding of the continuous rod, really it's a little bit some weak points. However, the technology starts to improve too much and decreasing a lot of things. One of the good things, just the manufacturing start to introduce to the market about the continuous rod is a coated continuous rod, because the rod running in the fluid. And since the rod running in the fluid, there is a majority or just a high percentage number of the produced fluid have some corrosion tendency. And this is normal steel. This is steel. And the steel, if you have some corrosion, and we'll see in the failure analysis later on, when you have some corrosion, creating some weak points here. But with a coated rod, it's extended the running life and so on for this. A lot of things we can talk about continuous rod, but this is just to open to you what's a continuous rod, why I need continuous rod, what's important of continuous rod, what I need to consider to design a continuous rod. If I have a problem of the well like this, even if it's a vertical well, if I run continuous rod, can help or not. This gives you a chance while you are sitting and design and selecting your surface and downhole equipment, what is the best for my well. It's not because the continuous rod gives me all these good things. I can run continuous rod for all the well, but not sometimes continuous rod. It will be impractical, will costing too much for running and boring, while it's normal standard rod, it's running for the well. If the normal standard rod is running for the well without problem, vertical well, you are not face any problem, go ahead and use normal standard sucker rods. But if you found the standard sucker rods start to have problem, rod wear and tubing wears, have some very high piston effect, pressure loss and so on, then yes, in this case you need to think about continuous rod. If you have deviated wells and very bad dogleg severity or horizontal wells, even, currently, just sucker rod used for horizontal well. If you run the well in horizontal section, it's not an easy to run with a standard rod. Then you need to run with a continuous sucker rod. What is a continuous sucker rod and what's look like? If you remember the sucker rod, standard normal sucker rod in our introduction, we said there is, just a size starting from 3/4 or just less than 3/4, and you have also lenses 25 feet or 30 feet. You have steel, you have only one configuration, rounded rod and so on. But for continuous sucker rod, usually according to the manufacturing, you can find in the market as a continuous sucker rod, you can find continuous sucker rod with 3 different metallurgy. You can find continuous sucker rod with different grade, 6 grades, different 6 grade. And some manufacturing maybe have one grade is maybe it's not yet published very well, but however, in general, in the market, currently used in the market for sucker rods as a continuous sucker rod, there is 3 different metallurgy, 6 different grades, 2 different shapes. One of the good things also for the continuous rod is the shape. Usually the rods and the standard continuous rod have a rounded shape. And we said, if you remember, for a deviated well and side load, you are divided the side load to the length of the rod string, because all the load will be in the lower side in one point, because there is a pre-contact one point between the jointed of the rod and the tubing well. But the manufacturing start to introduce also what we call just semi-elliptical rods in this shape, you know. While the contact, you have 2 contact points, then even the way it's here divided, not only for the length of the rod over divided 2, because there's 2 points. However, in the market, for the continuous rod, there is 3 metallurgy, 6 different grade, 2 shapes. What this shape and what the metallurgy? We said just we have semi-elliptical shape like this one, and we have rounded shape like this one. This is a part of the tubing, and this is a rod. This is a rod, and this is a part of the tubing. For the rounded rod, you will find the contact, only 1 point contact point here. For elliptical rods, you found 2 contact points. Then all the load, all the side load over the rod will be divided to 2 points. If the side load over one joint, for example, 25 feet, is 100 pounds, then for each feet will have 4 pounds for rounded rod. For elliptical rod, each feet you will have 2 pounds in each area. Then you are reducing more. Remember also, when we are reducing friction, we are reducing the weight. We are reducing the load, because the friction, it's the load you need to lift it at the surface, and especially in the upstroke. Friction in the load also in the downstroke, which can create some buckling for your rod. Then we have 2 shapes, rounded and semi-elliptical rods. For rounded rod, there is 4 sizes of the sucker rod. Size 3, size 4, size 6, size 8. Some manufacturing can have different name, but however, size 3, it's about 3/16 of inches. Size 4 is 7/8. Size 6 is 1 inches. Size 8.5 is 1/5/32 of inches. Then this allow you just to run either one rod string from top to the bottom, or we can use tapered rod string. For elliptical rods, we have more sizes, from size 2 up to size 7. This from 3/4, smaller rods, and 3/16, like this, 7/8, and we have between this and this 15/16, 1 inches, and 17/18, 1 inches. What about metallurgy and the grade? Metallurgy, it's a grade. If we say we have 6 grades, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As a grade D, or can call the grade D or DR. Also manufacturing can a little bit different in names. And also grade DE or DER, we have different in grade. Different grade, different in metallurgy. You have either only carbons and magnesium, or just you have different metallurgy like we show here, you know, and you have, it's just only carbon steel or alloy steel and so on. However, you know, this just, you know, I like to present this to you just to know that currently in the manufacturing or in the oil and gas industry, there is a lot of variety for the rod, continuous rod string to use. Different metallurgy, different size, different grades, and so on. Okay, this is about the rod string. We talk about rod string, that we have standard rod string, jointed rod string, 3 types of jointed rod string, standard steel, fiberglass, hollow rods, plus the continuous rod. And we talk about downhole bounds and rod lift completion and so on. What about the bounding unit, the surface equivalent? Now, all the downhole, it's okay. The bound, it's reciprocating and required something reciprocating motion. What is provided the reciprocating motion of the bound is the surface bounding unit. And it transfers to the downhole bound via the rod string. What is a surface pumping unit? Surface pumping unit, this is just the shape. I try just to put in this slice different shape in order not to put in your mind that sucker load is only this one, only this shape, and only this shape. Sucker load, it's a reciprocating pumping unit. Surface pumping unit is a reciprocating system. Whatever system you have as a surface can provide for it to you a reciprocating motion. It's called a reciprocating pumping unit. It's called the surface pumping unit. You can find in this shape and you can find in different shape. Whatever anything can move the rod up and down, move the rod up and down, up and down, up and down is called surface pumping unit. What the function of surface pumping unit? One of the main important functions of surface pumping unit that's carry well load. What is a well load? The well load is the load of the fluid plus the load of the rod. Because who's lifting the rod? Who's moving the rod up and down? Who's moving the rod up and down? It's a pumping unit. And the rod is connecting at the bottom to the plunger of the pump. And the plunger is connected to the traveling valve. When traveling valve is closed, then the fluid load is carried by the plunger. Then the fluid load is carried by the rod string. Who's carry all that rod string plus the fluid load? It is a pumping unit, the surface pumping unit. Another main important thing, it's used to stroke the downhole pumps up and down, just running the up and down and so on. Not only that, because the downhole pumps need to run up and down at up to a certain speed. I cannot run surface pumping unit up and down, for example, 1,000 revolution up and down, or just 2,000, 3,000. No, based on well production, based on downhole geometry, based on a lot of factors, I need to control the pumping speed up and down. How to control the pumping speed up and down? These pumping units, it will reduce the speed of the prime mover, the motor, the engine, what's provided in the market to the certain stroke per minute, to the certain reciprocating up and down. And also convert the rotary motions of the prime movers to up and down. Either in these cases, also, it's converting this to up and down. Then this 4 of the main functions, there is a lot of function for pumping unit, but these 4 of the main function of the surface pumping unit. In the market as a beam pumping, because if you see here, I said surface pumping unit. Because surface pumping units, it's named for all that type of pumping units. But if we start to divide it to these types and these different types, these types, this one and this one mean beam pumping system, because it depends on the beam thing. Is a beam, walking beam, and so on, beam types. This type or this shape, all these different geometric, different shape of pumping units called beam pumping unit. You will find in the market different type of beam pumping unit. For example, this is a conventional standard pumping unit. You have a center point here and push from the rear of the units up, push this and moving this is what we call horse head up and down. This is a little bit different, called enhanced geometry, front mounted class 3 levers. It's pushed from the front. It's called Mark II pumping units. These type of units depend on the balancing in what we call counterbalance. Counterbalance here is steel counterbalance. There is another unit. It's the same, but depend on the balance. Instead of counterbalance steel, it's air counterbalance. Why I need counterbalance in the pumping unit? I need counterbalance in the pumping unit to reduce the load over my motors. Why I reduce the load over the motor, and how I reduce the load over the motor. If you are just thinking a little bit, what's the load in the upstroke? The load while the unit is going up in the upstroke is the load of the rod string plus the load of the fluid. What is the load in the downstroke? There is no load in the downstroke. The unit is just only lifting the rod to keep the load under tension, and then you have only the weight of the rod and so on. Then the motor is loaded with high load in the upstroke, low load in the downstroke. Then I'm wasting time, and also the load in the motor will be not constant. The running life of the motor will be very low. But how I can reduce the load in the motor? You are reducing the load in the motor by introducing what we call counterbalance. It's balancing the weight with me. In the upstroke, while this unit is going in the upstroke, this weight is going against gravity, helping the units to lift a part of this load. There is a special design how much weight I need for that. Then the load in the upstroke is lifting by the unit, and part of that load is lifting by or helping by the counterbalance to lift. In the upstroke, the unit is lifting a part of this load because the upstroke is going down. The unit, you need to lift the load. Then this unit with the cycle, you have almost constant load in upstroke and downstroke. This you keep the load stable over the unit, over the gear reducers of the unit, over the motors, and reduce the peak load. Then you reduce the power consumption and so on. How we can, the API pumping unit model designated, how the API, just define this unit and so on. I have different units, different geometry if you see. Meanwhile, each unit can be used for different wells because the wells is different from area to area, from field to field. I have well produced from 1,000 feet. I have another well produced from 16,000 feet. I have well produced with 100 barrels per day. I have another well produced 1,000 barrels per day. The loads, the depths is changed. Then the pumping unit capacity should be changed. I can use the pumping unit capacity just equivalent to the load what I have from this well, and geometry different. Then the API starts just, to designate this pumping unit and define, like the downhole pump, if you remember the downhole pump, we said downhole pumps, I need to know the tubing size, I need to know the pump size, I need to know the pump configuration, downhole pumps, and so on, barrel lengths, plunger lengths, and extension lengths. For the pumping unit, it's the same. I need to know, first of all, what type of beam unit. What is the beam units I have here? It's conventional type, Mark II type, air balance is a conventional type, Mark II type, air balance, enhanced geometry or reverse marks, low profile, and so on, What type of pumping units? First of all, then, I need to know what type of pumping units. Okay, after I designated C, for example, is a conventional pumping unit. M is Mark II pumping units. B is is beam balance pumping units and so on. Then I need also to define how much peak torque these units can be run, can be turned the gear reducers. Because the gear reducer, in order to lift the weight, it requires a certain torque. What is the maximum torque? And torque is a function of two things, stroke length and the load. Stroke length, how far I just left, because, these two functions of that. Then I need to know what is the peak torque. It's a maximum torque rating for the pumping unit. Usually is writing this torque, for example, 640, and you multiply it by 1,000. Then what is the maximum torque in 1,000 of pound inches or inch pound, What is the maximum torque for this pumping unit? Since this is where I talk about torque, then we need to know this torque is related to the gear reducers. Gear reducers, what's the meaning gear reducer? Gear, it's what you are reducing is the speed of the prime movers. Then reducing the speed over one step, you are reducing one time. If, for example, the speed of the prime movers, 1,000 RPM, then it's going to the gear reducer reduced to 500. Then it's one step, it's from 1,000 to 100. Or inside the gear reducers, there's different sizes of gear. Then you are reducing the revolution, the speed over 2 times, from 1,000 to 500, from 500, for example, to 10, to 15, and so on. Then D means double reduction. If it's S, means single reduction. If it's T, it's triple reduction. However, majority, more than 95% of the pumping units in the oil and gas have double reduction gear reducer. The small units, very small units, can have a single reduction and so on. Rarely you can find a double reduction gear reducers and so on. Then second numbers, just it's about maximum torque rating in 1,000 of inch pound. The letter D, it is double reduction gear reducer. the gear reducer reducing the torque over two steps. Then you have another number. This unit is lifting load of the fluid, lifting load of the rod, plus even if there is a friction, it is a load in the upstroke. What's the maximum load I can lift it at the point which we're connecting the pumping units to the rod string? It is a polished rod. For that reason, we say maximum polished rod load. It's measured in 100 pounds, because if you multiply this 100 and 25, 600 pounds is the maximum load this unit can be lifted. More than that, the unit can be collapsed or destroyed. Each unit, I said, it's used to reciprocating the downhole pumps. Reciprocating the downhole pumps up and down. How much the length going up and down, what we call stroke length, going up and down, just what to how much length is. The last number here is indicating what is the maximum stroke length for these pumping units can be run. And usually this number is used to design, to calculate how much production I can get from my well. This number was the pump size with the speed. See together, we'll see later on in one equations how we can calculate that. I give you an example here, for being pumping unit an example. If I have a pumping unit with C1280 D365 192, what does that mean? C for me, it's mean type of pumping unit. The number 1280, if I multiply by 1000, it's mean gear reducer peak torque. It's in thousand of inch-pound or pound-inch. Then the second number, D, or second letters, is double reduction gear reducer. Double reduction gear reducer. That's mean gear reduction will reduce the speed over 2 steps. The number after that, it's related to the peak polished rod load or the maximum polished rod load. This is in 100 pounds. The last one is the maximum stroke length. This is the maximum stroke length I can run in there. Unit can run low with a stroke length less than this. Yes, there is a standard stroke length. When I say the maximum stroke length 192, that means this unit I cannot run with a stroke length more than 192, but I can run with a stroke length less than that. Usually the units can have option of 2 or just 3 or 4 stroke lengths. Some special pumping unit can have a little bit more and so. Graphically, how it look like for the previous example. That means this gear reducer is required. This is amount of torque as a maximum torque to rotate the pumping unit. This is a maximum torque, and this is a maximum load can be lifted by the polished rod. And here is a maximum stroke length going up and down. Since I said the pumping units have this designation, 1280, 365, 192, can I put any number here? For example, 136, 156, or just put here 238, or I can put here 100 or 90. No. There is, according to the ABI, there is a standard number. ABI defined, according to the ABI, there is a standard number for each part of the pumping unit. For example, for the gear reducer, the minimum standards number for the gear reducer, 6.4. And the maximum gear reducer standard is 3648. And after that, you can find another gear reducer with 10, 16, 25, and for example, 228, 320, 456. Can I found ABI, ABI, it's ABI certified pumping unit. 300, no. As a gear reducer, no. You can find, but it will be not an API. But according to the API standard, this is a standard gear reducer for the beam pumping units. You can find 114, you cannot find 100. What about the structure capacity? It's the same. You can find from 2100 up to, for example, this is the biggest one, 4701. And also you can find 119, 133, 200, and so on. Same for the gear reducer, same for the stroke length. You can find the pumping units with 16-inch stroke length up to 300 stroke length. This is for the beam pumping units. But for the other reciprocating pumping unit like a long stroke mechanicals or like hydraulics, yes, you can find a little bit difference because some long stroke mechanical, yes, you have a gear reducer and you can find different gear size because it's not an API. Hydraulics, yes, you can find different stroke lengths, different loads and so on. But when I start to talk here, talk about beam pumping system and so on. We divided the surface pumping unit to two categories, the beam pumping unit, and we talk about beam pumping unit. But since the manufacturing say, okay, I need very long stroke pumping units, and the usually normal beam pumping units cannot be run in very long stroke, because in order to run a beam pumping unit in very long stroke, you need a very big gear reducers, because the torque over the gear reducer is a function of the stroke length, and then you need a very big rotating pumping units. Usually, really, it's not preferred to have pumping units, beam pumping units with a long stroke. And the maximum, as we saw in the previous slides, the maximum stroke length the manufacturing reached for the beam pumping unit is 300 inch. Then manufacturers start to think about why I cannot produce long stroke pumping units, reduce all the rotating hazard of the beam pumping unit and so on, and use different type of that. Yes, the manufacturing two types, either mechanical, like the towers. One here is the mechanical pumping units. The pumping units always near to the wellheads and running with a system like built system like this, small gear reducer like this, pumping units going up and down like this, small counterweights, counterbalance in the back. And this one can reach to 366 inches. In very long stroke. With 360 inches, I can produce the same production with a very slow pumping unit, going up and down very slow. I will show you in the next slide what the benefits of running the pumping unit slow and so on. This one is very long pumping unit. Usually when it's compared, it's say just reduce road reverse 40 to 60 times. What mean reduce road reverse 40 to 60 times? Road reverse, that's mean I'm going up and back, up and back, up and back. Here, going up and back. If I run, for example, with a pumping unit with a stroke length 100, beam pumping unit, then I need 10 stroke per minute to produce the same production. If I use tower unit with 200 inches stroke length, then I reduce the speed to 5. Then the number of reverse going up and down, reverse the motions, it will be at least 50% of that. Since I reducing the speed, I reducing the reverse, then I reducing the power consumption, because I reduce the acceleration load. The peak load here will be low than that. Sometimes, just eliminated gas look, because going very slow, and also the pump spacing can be very good. I can have a very high pump spacing. I will show you while we have while we start to see the problem of the gas. What's the mean of spacing and compression ratio and so on, It's you can use unidirection motors and so on. About hydraulics, really hydraulics also it's give more benefit than this is mechanical tower. Because for the hydraulic pumping units, it's completely flexible pumping unit. For this type of pumping units, just one thing I forget to mention, the stroke length is fixed. You cannot change stroke length. For example, if I said this pumping unit stroke length, it's 300 inches, then the units can be run with 300 inches from day one, and if you want to change, you cannot change. But if you are looking to the hydraulic pumping units, you can find the hydraulic pumping, since it's hydraulic, and you can control the hydraulic system going up and down, then you can change the stroke length to infinity numbers. For example, if the stroke length is 300, I can run with 299, 200, for example, 5, 206, 10 inches, 15 inches, 20 inches, you can adjust. Then flexibility will be very, very, very high for flexibility. For that reason, it's the energy efficiency. It's very, very high, Also the load. The beam pumping unit, if we remember, the API says the maximum polished road load I can lift is 47,000 pounds. For this one tower, some manufacturing is reached up to 55,000, and some of them a little bit small, it's claim about 60,000 pounds. For the hydraulic pumping system, you can lift up to 80,000 pounds. It is this a benefit to us to lift more? Yes. When lifting, when allow you to lift more load, that will allow you to go deeper and produce more production, longer stroke lengths, bigger pump size and bigger loads, and so on. But one of the problems for the hydraulic system, it's hydraulics. They require very high maintenance. It's all hydraulic pumping system can have tendency of leak from the piston here or there, and also here, because this is different than even for the hydraulic pumping units, there is two different types. Either what we call some like this, it's called wellhead mounted. All the units is mounted over the wellheads, and this can be skid mounted. You can push up or far away from the well. The difference between these for the wellhead mount is not an easy to balance, and all the pumping units installed over the well, and then it's have some risk for just the length of the towers and the wind and so on. Here it's a little bit rigid and so on, but this is easy, it's light and so on. Each one have advantage and disadvantage. When you start to design, when you start to select, you need to put in front of you what advantage, what is disadvantage based on your based on your location. But because if you have some advantage in your area, maybe disadvantage in my area, it's not mean that the disadvantage for this one can work worldwide and so on. Let me just show you what's the difference between low speed, long stroke pumping unit and beam pumping units, and why usually we are recommended in the oil and gas industry, if possible, to run your beam pumping system, your reciprocating sucker rod pumping system as slow as possible. But I need production. In order to run as slow as possible at the same production, then you need to increase the stroke length. I have here two, just two different examples, Remember, 1 stroke per minute, that's the mean units going up and down. 1 per minute for each minute going up and down. That means the number of cycles per day is 1,440 cycles per day. Then 1 stroke per minute is mean 1,440 cycle per day. If I have same size of downhole pumps here and there, and I want to produce same production using this type of beam pumping unit or this type of long stroke pumping unit, the maximum stroke of this pumping unit is 168. The maximum stroke of this pumping unit is 366. Then in order to have the same production, I need to run this system with 8 strokes per minute. While this long stroke pumping unit, I need to run with 4 strokes per minute in order to give me the same production. Assumed all the other condition is the same, typicals between the two systems. Then what does that mean as a cycle per day? Cycle going up and down. Remember, cycle per day. When the cycle is increased, your problems will be increased. Your friction will be increased. The load will be increased. This means this unit is going up and down. 8 stroke per minute and 8 was multiply 1,440 cycles per day. That means 11,420 cycles per day. Compared to this one would be 5,765 per day. If we assume the rod string here will be broken after, for example, a certain cycle per day, then the rod string running in this well will be double life the rod string running in this well. Because the rod string, if we assume the rod string will be broken after, for example, it's 10 million cycle, or just for 10,000 cycle, then this one will have low cycle than this one also. Then try always, if you're able to produce your well with beam pumping system, try when you start to design, start to slow down to use the minimum possible stroke per minute. If you are not able to give the same production at the highest possible speed, you can increase the speed a little bit and so on. This is just, as a graph, this one paper I published, the relation between pumping speed versus stroke per minute and show, if I have these stroke lenses and this is a pumping speed, was increasing the stroke minute and the pumping speed for this type of oil. We run simulation for this type of oil and we calculate how many cycles per day, and you can see, we can use this graph as a difference for you. But for this type of oils, pumping depth 6,000, fluid gradient, production, pump, downhole pumps, wellhead pressures, pump take pressures, and this rod string. We run this using the rod S-Rod softwares, and we found this relation between surface pumping units, pumping speed, and the number of cycles per day. And so when the pumping speeds increased, the number of cycles per day, really in 1,000 cycles, will decrease dramatically. If you want to compare pumping units, this was a long stroke pumping units, was a beam pumping units, for example, was 100-inch stroke, and this 300 or just 380 or just 260. You can compare from this using this chart, and you can get you what's the number of cycles. Then let us go to the last surface equipment for the beam pumping system. It's the prime movers, which is provide the power to the pumping unit, which is provide the rotary motion to the pumping unit. Then the main function of the prime mover is to supply the rotary power to the pump jack. Pump jack, it's a beam pumping system, it's a surface pumping system, or the pumping units, all type of pumping units, what we call the prime movers. There's two types of prime movers, either engines like this, or just electric motors like this one. And engine can be diesel engine or just gas engine. Whatever you drive the engine, drive by diesel, drive by gas. At the end, you have a rotary motion here. At the end, for the motor, you have a rotary motion here. It's connecting to the dereducers of the pumping unit, which is a reciprocating pumping unit. Then the main function of the prime mover is to supply the rotary power to the pump jack or pumping unit or surface pumping unit, and so on. Wellhead. The Sackrod wellhead is a very simple wellhead for the artificial lift system. Usually we need some special component as the wellhead. One of the very important component and wellhead is a stuffing box. This different shape and type of the stuffing box depend on the flow condition, depend on the wellhead pressures, depend on the gas liquid ratio, depend on the environment concern you need, and so on, depend on the water cuts, gas content, and so on, Then the top part of the wellhead Sackrod, it's the stuffing box. And the stuffing box is used just to allow the polished rod, which is connecting the rod string downhole, to move up and down without leaking the fluid from the stuffing box. It's closed over the polished rod using inside here, if you look, some special type of rubber, while the fluid below the stuffing box can direct it to the flow line, production line, and so on. Below that, you have the POP, flow out preventers, which can be closed over the polished rod or the roadside. I need that in case you have a problem here, or in case I need to change the rubber of the stuffing box, then I close the well from this one as a safety device. And so there is one very important safety device for the Sackrod pumping system, and I strongly recommend it, not only for Sackrod pumping system, for all positive displacement pumping system, to use what we call a pressure switch on the flow line as the first point in the flow line. To use a pressure switch, because pressure switch here is just as a safety device for the pumping unit. This Sackrod pumping unit is a positive displacement. The pumping units will lift the fluids against the wellheads, whatever wellheads you have. For an example, this stuffing box should be this, for example, pressure switch should be connecting before any valve, because here is wrong, should be connecting before that valve, or just to keep this valve without hand, keep always open. In case this valve close or the flow line is plugging, the pumping unit will be pumping and increase pressure. The function of the pressure switch, you can set the pressure switch up to a certain safety limit of pressure. We said my flow line cannot withstand, and wellhead pressure stuffing box cannot withstand, for example, more than 200 psi. Then I adjust my vibration switch to 150 psi. Then when the pressure is increased due to the pumping action, in case you have a plug of the line, of whatever, something closed here, pressure increase, the pressure switch, if the pressure increase over the certain adjusting limit, he will stop the unit and will stop the well. This is just very general about the road lift system main component, starting from well completion, downhole pumps, road string, pumping units, prime movers, and also the wellhead. There is some more details about that. When we design, you find more details, but this is a basic. This is the main basics, and you will find in the majority of the well what already I presented to you. Whatever you go, you found at least, maybe you found different shape of stuffing box, but it's stuffing box. You found different shape, for example, of pumping units. It's beam, long stroke, hydraulics, mechanics, and so on. Then how to design, how to select this equipment? What type of pump I need to select? What size of pump I need to select? What size of rod? Do I need to use 1 inch rod from top to the bottom? Do I need to use a tapered rod string? Do I need to use 7/8 inch rod string? What size of pumping units I need to use? Do I need to use a bigger pumping units, 1280, or small pumping units, for example, 320? What stroke length I need to use? 122 or just 50, 52, 54 stroke lengths? What stroke per minute? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. Then let us to go just in very brief about system design. What we need to consider in design, what you need to put in mind when you are designing the road string. First of all, when you need to design the road string, you need to have minimum information. This information in the slide in front of you is the minimum information you need to have in your hand. Whatever you have more information, you can have better design. More information you have, better design you have. Low information you have, you will assume the lot of data, then you have poor design you have. I need to know the well productivity, because from well productivity I need to know what flow rates, how much fluid I need to lift from these wells, and at what depths I need to put the pump, what the depths of the pump I need to put, where is. Also, I need to know the BVT data. What's the gas volume? How much gas in solution? What's the bubble point pressures? Where is the gas? Where the gas can come out of solutions? At what pressures? What's the gas oil ratio? I need to calculate how much. This in order to also to calculate how much free gas at the pump. What is the formation volume factors? The pump is running downhole at the well side, but my production calculated or just measured in the tank. Then I need a certain production in the tank. What is the beta O I need to have? What's the viscosity at the temperature of the pump and so on? What type of fluid I need to have? What corrosions? Because selecting materials and even design the rod string, the size, sometimes safety factor. How much safety factor I need to have for my rod string when I design rod string? If I design rod string for a very sweet crude oil, there is no corrosion, nothing, then maybe I don't need to have a very high safety factor. But if there is a corrosive, very severe corrosive environment, maybe I can increase my safety factors and so on. Sand, is there is a sand? If there is a sand, yes. What type of pump? What type of completions I need to have? What's tubing string? What's the casing size? At the end, economics, I need to select the most economical pumping system. I need to consider for the CAPEX and OPEX, not only one of them, not only CAPEX and compare CAPEX by CAPEX and finish, and can be effective in the OPEX. No, I need just to see CAPEX and OPEX. CAPEX, okay, how much the system will cost me? And OPEX, this system, how much will cost me at the running, as an operation? Sometimes maybe I found the CAPEX one system and select one system with capex a little bit higher than the other, but with OPEX will be low. Then when you start to compare or design your system, finally do the economical study, economical analysis, and make your economical with a certain predictions. Say, okay, I need to predict this well's economics for a year or 2 years, or sometimes for 3 years. Then you are plugged in, you're at 0 point of time, this is my capex. And with the time for each, for example, months or 6 months or year, how much will be OPEX. After 1 year, you can compare the system, two systems. How much difference between the total cost for this system to produce for me, for example, 5,000 barrels per day. This system compared to the system, or this size compared to the size, and so on. One of the very important things when you design your artificial lift system, especially beam pumping system or just reciprocating pumping system, when you finish your design, start to just analyzing what is my total system efficiency. Total system efficiency, like, how much I pay for these computers and it's efficient computer or not efficient. I pay $1,000, but the computer, it's consumed for me a lot of time to run my design, my system, or so, and so, or I pay less and so on. Total system efficiency means how much horsepower I gain from this system to how much horsepower I provide to that system. I provide, for example, X horsepower, but I gained Y horsepower from this system. Let me just give you some general example. This is an example for a well produced 217 barrels per day from 5,000 feet with a pumping unit C20, 246, 68 with downhole pumps, 1.5 inches, running with 10.5 stroke per minute with rod string 78 inches. Each part of the pumping system, in order to compare your total system efficiency, this will give you how much you are designing, how you did your design, how excellent you do your design, and how much you are pay attention while you do design. Not only that, when you design your system and you calculate initially your total system efficiency, keep this in mind, keep this in your record. While the system is running, try from time to time to measure also your total system efficiency and compare with your initial total system efficiency. If you found something start to total system efficiency reduce, that means one part of your system start to lose its efficiency, start to have some problem, start to have some failures. It's alarming you. For example, I have a motor here, and my input power to this motor is 14.8 horsepower. In order to run all this system, the whole system, the power here, like a volt and amp and hertz, for this motor, it's 14.8 horsepower. The motor, in order to rotate himself, it's required a certain horsepower, what we call losses inside the motor. Then the motor is without, if I dismantle the motor from this unit and I rotate the motor, this motor for size, for example, it's 100 horsepower, and in order to rotate themselves, it's consumed 1.8 horsepower. And out of this 14.8 horsepower, the horsepower going to the pumping units, going to drive this pumping unit, is 14.8 minus 1.8. Then the net horsepower going to the pumping units, it's about what? About 13 horsepower. Here also you can calculate my motor efficiency. If you divide it 13 over 14.8, you give to your motor efficiency. You can compare from time to time if my motor efficiency, bearing of the motor going well, running well, and so on. Like, what else is pumping unit also in order to going up and down and running the pumping units, moving, there is a bearing here, there is a counterweights, and so in order to running, these pumping units consume 1.3 horsepower. Then out of the pumping unit here, how much would be the horsepower? Would be 13 minus 1.8 then the net horsepower at the end here between the pumping unit and the polished rod at the top of the rod string will be 11.3 horsepower. Up to here, all these losses in the system. Here, still, I not used this system. Still all in order to run my pumping system, my input power 14.8, my power start to be input for downhole, it's 11.7. All this is difference in the surface equipment horsepower. But also there is a rod string, and rod string going up and down. And rod string, there is a tendency of friction between the rod and tubing and coupling, and depend on the type of the rod, type of the coupling, the weights, a lot of things. There is also a losses along the rod string, and these are very critical, especially if you have a deviated well, especially if you have big coupling size, especially if you are designing your wells, your rod string in very bad way or is not in good way, you know, and so on. Then the polished rod load here just reduced, and there is a power consumption over the rod string, it's about 3.8. Then the horsepower reached downhole, it's how much to the pump, or just the used horsepower. The useful horsepower to work with this pump, it's 8.4 horsepower. My input horsepower is 14.8. And I used the useful horsepower, it's 8.4. The difference between here and there, it's all consumed in the equipment, in the surface equipment and downhole equipment and there. For that reason, my system efficiency, total, what we call total system efficiency, it's the pump horsepower over the motor input horsepower to the motor. This is what we call total system efficiency. Whatever higher number you have here, it's good design you have here. But not always higher number, it's mean best design. It's a good design, not sometimes I have here frictions in road buckling, I have some tubing problems, I have deviated wells, I have some friction, well, very high wellhead, then I use a very high friction stopping box in the top and so on. But however, this is a way how to calculate your total system efficiency. It's the pump horsepower divided to the motor input horsepower. It's one of the points when you finish your design, start to calculate. And then rerun the design and see if you are able to increase this with the same production without hurting your system, then it will be okay. Then about difference out from this all is lost in the surface equipment. First point in design, maybe several people, a lot of design engineers is ignorant. As I said before, when we design, we need to consider the well productivity. Well productivity, that's mean you need to put in your mind the well inflow performance, not only the productivity index. I work with several engineers. When we start to design for artificial lift or even for a lot of things, they start to talk about productivity index. Productivity index is usually used for undersaturated reservoir. It's usually used if you are producing above the bubble point. Productivity index is a straight line. That's if your pump is sitting with a pump intake pressure higher than the bubble point pressure, then use your productivity index. But generally speaking, for artificial lift, we need to maximize production. Maximizing production, that means you need to deplete it the maximum possible if there's no problem of the reservoir, bottom hole flow pressure. Then you need to run below the bubble point. You need to run as low as possible. As low as possible in this area is a curvature area. This Vogel inflow performance, this curve, by the way, it's Vogel inflow performance. But remember, the Vogel inflow performance, it's flow rates against pressure. But what flow rates? It's stock tank barrel flow rates. Flow rates as a stock tank barrel. But the pump is running at downhole. Then the pump running at the reservoir. Pump is running here, and I calculated my production at the tank here at standard condition. the inflow performance at standard condition. Then I need to consider two things. Either to just draw the curve like this, what we call reservoir barrier, including the bubble point pressure, or while I calculating, I will show you an example. I need to consider with me the beta O, the formation volume factors as a volume. But there is another important factors you need to be considered. I draw this curve just to show you the importance and what is the volume and how you consider and how the pump is running downhole. And because a lot of people start to blaming the pump. They said, I designed my pump to produce 100 barrels per day, but what I receive in my tank is only 20 barrels per day. And you start to pull the pump, change the pump, and each time you have same problem. Problem no change. We design the pump to produce 100, and the tank produce only 20 barrels. But the pump is running perfect. Pump running with 100% mechanical efficiency, but volumetric efficiency is less because you are not consider the gas, the volume of the gas. Then you need to consider the total reservoir flow. Total reservoir fluid is the gas plus the liquid. Total reservoir fluid, gas plus liquid. For example, if I want to produce with my bottom hole flowing pressure 200 psi, then I need to produce in the tank this amount of flow, this here around 550 barrels per day. Then I need my system to give me on the tank 550 barrels per day. If I run my system, I design my system at pump size, stroke length, stroke per minute to produce 500 barrels per day, what I will receive in the tank will be much less. Why? Because there's a shrinkage. There is what you call beta O. The gas won't start to pressure decreasing and reach to the standard conditions. The gas start to come out of solution, and at the tank you will receive only this. Then, in order to receive in the tank 550 barrels per day, you need to consider as a liquid. Up to now, I'm talking as a liquid. There is no gas. You need to consider to produce the system to displace downhole 600 barrels per day. Then now start to come two terminology, production and displacement. Displacement, that's the pump, how much will displace fluid inside the tubing. Displace fluid inside the tubing. Production, how much fluid reach to my tank. Then displacement here, if there is no gas, I need my system to design with a parameter to displace 600 barrels per day. But I produce below the bubble point. Here is a bubble point. I produce below the bubble point. Since I produce below the bubble point, there will be a gas out of solution. Gas out of solution. Then at that point will be a free gas. I calculated the free gas and I found there is a certain volume of free gas. When I added the volume of the free gas to the volume of this liquid as a pump, conditioned and so on, then what I found, this is the total volume. If you assumed you will pump it, all the free gas with the fluid you have, then you need, if, for example, if there's a pack or something like that, there's some restriction. In order to produce 500 barrels per day, I need my pump to displace almost around 850 barrels per day as a total fluid downhole. This if I want to displace all the fluid, liquid plus gas. But usually for the completion of sucker rod pumping system, we said we run the completion without packer, then I need the area between tubing and casing to be free, then I vent some of the free gas to the casing, to the annulus, and they can, by a certain way, venting to the surface in a certain safety way and so on. Then in this case, how much volume of gas I vent? If I vent this volume of gas, then this is the net volume I need my pump to calculate just to displace in order to produce this in the tank. If I have downhole gas separator or just have a very efficient downhole gas venting, maybe I separated more gas. Then in this case, all this volume is a gas separated and venting to the casing. And so on until I so on until I just vented all the gas. If I able to vent all the gas and I found no gas as a pump would take all the gas venting to the casing, then I reach to this point. Then this is one of the very important subject while we design the road lift system. The volume of the pump. How much volume of the pump I need to consider as my pump to be displaced. For that reason, we named the volume as a pump is a displaced volume. The volume at the surface is a production. Okay? Let us to see how we calculate and what factor affecting in your displacement and in your volume and so on. Generally speaking, my volume displaced by the pump condition, what we call V, is a pump displacement. Here in these equations, it's calculated in barrel per day at the pump condition. Okay, multiply by SP. What is the SP? It's a stroke length, but not this stroke length again. The pump running downhole, then the stroke length at the pump. Is the stroke length as a pump different than the stroke length from the surface? Yes. Stroke length as a pump completely different than stroke length as surface. The pump running here and the surface pumping is going up and down in this case and lifting this rod string, polished rod, and polished rod lifting this rod string. All this is steel. And usually the steel have elasticity. Elasticity is a function of the load over the steel. And the rod is lifting in the upstroke, is lifting its load, plus the load of the float. Then as a function of this load, this is rod string will have some stretch. You know, the stretch, the long stroke here, the stroke at the surface not reach exactly at downhole. The stroke downhole will be the surface stroke minus the stretch over the rod string. There is some other factor, maybe it's not in this case. Maybe we can explain later on some other factor affecting on that, what you call over travel and under travel and so on. But now, just let us take it simple. The downhole stroke, what we call effective stroke, if the pump completely filled by the fluid, it is the surface stroke minus the stretch over the rod string. Multiply by the speed. Speed is stroke per minute. How many times am going up and down, up and down, up and down? We are filled this tank, this barrel, how many times per day? Stroke per minute, and then convert per day and so on. Then square the pump size. D is the plunger size. The plunger size, that means the pump size inside the diameter of the pump or plunger size. This is an inch. Then the N is a stroke per minute. A stroke per minute going up and down. SP is the effective stroke length is measured in inch in order to use this constant. 0.1166, then SP will be in inches, V will be in barrel per day, D, the plunger diameter or the pump diameter. Plunger diameter, it is a pump diameter. We give the same name for that. For that. Multiply by efficiencies. Remember, I have two efficiencies here. One is a mechanical efficiency. This pump is a mechanical. And for sure, any mechanical device have a mechanical efficiency. There is some fluid will slippage between plunger and barrel. The traveling valve, standing valve can be some problem, can be have some delay, can be have some leak, can be have some problem. However, you know, there is what you call mechanical efficiency, plus the volumetric efficiency. And the volumetric efficiency usually is a function of the gas. If my pump barrels completely filled with a fluid, but 50% of the pump volume is or just 25% of my pump volume is filled by gas, then my volumetric efficiency will be 75%. Then this is my pump displacement. It's equal a constant based on these units, multiplied by effective stroke length, speed, stroke per minute, plunger or pump size. It's at the power 2, multiply mechanical efficiency, multiply the volumetric efficiency. This calculated and gives you the volume of the fluid at the pump intake, at the pump conditions. But what at the surface? In order to convert this at the surface, I need to multiply, I need to divide the volume to beta O. Beta O is the formation volume factor. Barrel per stock tank barrel. This is in barrel and this is in stock tank barrel. And vice versa, if you want to calculate some of these parameters, then I need to know this V. In order to know how much V I need by my pump displacement, then I get this value from your inflow and multiply it by beta O, give you the volume of the pump displacement. This is an example for our wells produced, for example, with this pump, this API pump, 32 to 5 R rod pump, heavy oil, top anchor, cup types, 20 feet barrel length, 2 feet plungers, and only 1 feet extension in this case of pump. Pumping speed 7 feet, surface stroke length 168, total stretch over the road 21 inches in the road, stretched from top to the bottom 1 inch, 21 inches, the formation volume factor 1.18. If I assume that my mechanical efficiency 85%, volumetric efficiency 75%, then according to the previous equations, my pump displacement equal the constant, multiply this speed, effective stroke length speed, and so on. My effective stroke length will be surface stroke length minus the stretch of the road and multiply by the speed, stroke per minute, and the pump parameters, pump diameters. This is my pump diameters of power 2, multiply by efficiency, volumetric efficiency, and mechanical efficiency. At the end, it gives me pump displacement 378.2 barrel per day at the reservoir condition. And if I divided this 372.22 by 1.88, then what I will receive in the tank, 328 barrel. My pump displays downhole and do a work for 378, but what I receive in the tank, 328, and so on. One of the very important things we need to consider when we design and when we're selecting your pump setting depths and tubing size. When I want to select what depths and what depths I need to run the pump, put in mind, whatever possible, the pump should be set at a depth in where the pump intake pressure should be higher than the bubble point pressure. This if you achieve your target production with this case. You have a very active water drive reservoir, very good fluids, and so on. Then, okay, I don't need to run the pump deeper and depth at very high depths. No, enough for me to run the pump just below the level at the depths where is at the pump intake depths, the pressures will be above the bubble point. There will be no free gas. What else? If there's a free gas and if I want very high depletion, maximize the production and so on. For maximum depletion, or just if you have a problem of the gas problem and so on, try to locate the pump as deep as possible. As deep as possible where you can run the pump below the bottom of perforation. But this in case if you have a rat hole. Rat holes that mean you have a depth area below the bottom of perforation. The well is already completed or drilled more hole below the bottom of perforation, what we call rat hole. And also if there is no sand sometimes creates some problem if you have a rat hole and run the pump in that rat hole and so on. If there is no possible to run the pump below the perforation or at a certain depth, in order to avoid run the pump against the perforation, it's not recommended to run the pump against the perforation because it's turbulent area. Flow come out of the perforation and so on. Try to run the pump from 2 to 6 joint above the top of perforation. This depends on well configuration, tubing, and also perforation conditions, fluid, a lot of things, and so on. Tubing size, I like just to select the maximum. What is the maximum tubing size based on what is the maximum casing size available in my case, and what is the minimum tubing size based on the pump size. the bump size, it's insert bump size or tubing bump size. Based on these two parameters, I need to select my tubing size. Okay, and also the rod strength and so on. Then when I run design from bottom to the top. This is how much fluid I need for the, I show you in the previous slides, at what depths and so on. What I need to consider. And when I design the pump, usually design from bottom to the top. First of all, I need just to design for downhole pumps. I need to know the size of downhole pumps, which will be achieved for me, the required production. What also type of the pump, tubing pump, rod pump, and so on, you know. What is the metallurgy of the pump? Also what type, it could be tubing pump, rod pump, top anchor, bottom anchor, and so on, you know. Rod strength, what is the rod strength configurations? And it's what's the grade of the rod strength? What's the coupling site configuration? It's standard coupled rod strength or just continuous rod strength, tapered rod strength, what grade, grade C, grade K, special grade, what size, normal size, slim horse size, oversize, and so on. Then the pumping units, and you consider what size of pumping units at the surface, also what type of pumping unit, geometry pumping unit, conventional Mark II, beam units, mechanical long stroke, hydraulic pumping units, also accessories. Do I need to run sinker bar? Do I need to run rod guide, centralizers, and so on. And prime mover at the end, which will drive all my system and so on. But also, one point you need to consider when you start to select all this equipment, all these parameters, and all the pump size and surface equipment. There's some point you need to keep in mind while you are sitting in front of your program software. Try to keep in mind that going up in the upstroke, the pumping units is lifting 3 loads. In the upstroke, in the force, in the upstroke, my pumping unit lifting 3 loads. Load of the rod strength and load of the fluids and friction resistance. Whatever possible in order to have the same production. If you are able to reduce this load, you will gain a lot. You will reduce the peak polished rod load, what you call peak polished rod load. Peak polished rod load, it is a peak load in the upstroke. When I reduce the peak polished rod load, I reduce the load over the pumping units. I reduce the loads over my prime movers. When I reduce the load of the fluid, I reduce the load over my rod strength. I have longer running life rod strength. I can use smaller rod strength and so on. But in the downstroke also, what I have, even in the downstroke, you are lifting the rod of the weight of the rod strength. Plus, you are moving the rod, moving against the flow. There is a friction against the flow. And this is what we call like a bouncing, like a friction. The minimum load in the pumping unit downstroke is called minimum polished rod load. The good designers, which have the load, the difference between peak polished rod load and minimum polished rod load as close as possible. It's not an easy to have, but the best design for you when you have the load between minimum load and maximum load, it is just as low as possible. In some cases, the people start to running the pumping units at high speed and start to find this is a flow resistance load higher than the weight of the rod stroke, then the pumping units start to be, the pumping unit going down and still the rod not going down, what you call rod floating, and this is a big problem. And for that reason, you know, you need just to design, to take care in your design. Try to have as minimum as possible the difference between peak polished rod load and minimum polished rod load. To have the minimum flow loads, you need, if you are possible to run your pumping with the smallest possible pump, then you can have a low load. If you are possible to run your system with the smallest rod strength, then you can have a low rod strength and so on. Generally speaking, as a best practice, if you are not able, try, if possible, as much as you can, that the minimum load strength to not be not less than 20% of the peak polish load. Less than that, try to rerun the design. Change parameters, change speed, change stroke per minute, change bump size, change root configuration in order to have this is a little bit higher and this little bit lower and increase the gap between these two parameters and so on. Then the upstroke peak polish load equal weight of road strength, weight of fluids, and flow resistance. In the downstroke, the minimum polish load equal weight of road strength minus flow resistance. At operating, is this affecting the operating? Yes. When the load is increased, remember, the life of your equipment, surface and downhole decrease. The load will be increase in the structure and in the torque, either increasing structure load or the torque over the gear reducer, because you need to just monitoring these two loads, what we call torque is a torque and load. Remember, when this is increased, your equipment life will decrease. Surface and downhole. Cycles, how many cycles per day? Remember I said that 1 stroke per minute equal 1,440 cycles per day. When the cycles will be increased, your running life will be decreased. Run times, that means run time per day. How long is my running units running time per day? As 24 hours and so on. Cost, I also mentioned before, you need to consider for your capital investment, not only operating cost, not only capital investment. Operating cost for repair and maintenance and energy and power consumptions and so on. Also, when you start to design your road strength, try to design API road strength, tapered API road strength, like in this one. Tapered API road strength, it's used to reduce the total weight. Because if I use only 1 inch rods like this, then the weight will be high. In order to minimize my weight, I use tapered road strength. The API tapered road strength usually used in that shape, in that direction. The biggest one in the top, smallest one in the top, and will be with a smooth different in diameter. The incremental between one size and the other is 1/8 inches. 8/8 inches, 7/8 inches, 3/4 of inches, and so on. And this, for example, like tapered road strength 65, it means 3/4 inches, and 5/8, 88 is all 1 inches from top to the bottom, and so on. Okay, what a program is used to sizing the road string and second roads and so on. Usually in the market there is different program, but there is two main famous program. Majority of the people is used worldwide. It's called S-Road and Roadstar. There is another programs like CoRoads and ST bumps and so on. But really, these two programs, it's most accurate program and most majority people used, and so on. And S-Road, maybe I not have the demo to run for you, and there is no time. Maybe you can have another session before for road design if it's required running S-Road and Roadstar. However, you have a lot of information input for that one. Like this, you have a lot of input information for this S-Road, and the output, you have different output, about 16 report output for the pumping unit, for the road, for the downhole pumps, even for the balancing of the pumping unit, for the motor, for the load, for the stress over each joint of roads, and so on. And also give you the predicted dynamometer. I will see later on what's mean of dynamometers and so on. And this different program, what we call the Roadstar programs and so on. Roadstar program is a program usually used like S-Road, what was different configuration, but at the end, the two software give you the two output parameters and so on. I'll try to stop here because, just analyzing the second road pumped well, really it's required to start session from beginning and so on, I will stop in this point this time, and then next time we can start from analyzing well performance and so on. Hassan, if you have anything.
Thank you, Dr. Gharib, for the well informative and detailed lecture. I'm sure our audience have learned the most out of it. Yeah, we have got certain questions. Someone is asking how can we use sucker rod pump in the deviated and what will be the efficiency in that case?
No, I not catch you in the last, how we can use Saccharose pump in deep well, you see?
He's
Hello?
asking if we use sucker rod in the deviated well, what will be the efficiency?
Yes, and use Saccharose well in deviated wells. For sure, the efficiency will be less than vertical wells. But however, with the technology currently and what they design, the Saccharose pump used not only for deviation well, it's used for horizontal well. But you need to consider the parameters. You remember for deviation well, you have a side load. Then your main concern here, how to reduce the side load of the rod string with the deviated wells. In order to increase the efficiency here, I talk about the total system efficiency. For sure, total system efficiency will be less because a lot of friction will be between rods and the tubing size. The efficiency, the total system efficiency can be reached to 35, 40%, and so on. But however, using long stroke, very slow pumping system, very small downhole pumps will improve your total system efficiency for deviated wells. Try to keep in your mind, try to run for deviated well with the smallest possible downhole pump. Why? Smallest possible downhole pump will reduce the flood load. Then we reduce the load in the rod string. Then we reduce the side load. Then we reduce the frictions. And also slow as possible the speed, the pumping speed. Slowing the pumping speed, we're reducing the cycle, the number of cycles. We're reducing also the failure. We're reducing the acceleration load and so on.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Gharib. We have another question. A student is asking, what considerations related to artificial lifting should we make if the target is at high pressure and temperature?
Yes, high pressures and high temperature. High pressure, it's okay. High pressure is helping the artificial lift. Because remember, why I need artificial lift? I need artificial lift to lift the fluid from the well to the surface. To lift the fluid from the well to the surface, if the bottom hole flow pressure, it's not enough to lift that flow to the surface. Then the artificial lift is creating for me delta B. Delta B between the bottom pressures and the required hydrostatic head pressure. When the pressure is increased, the delta B will decrease. Then the load or the work required by the artificial lift will be decreased. Temperature, yes, temperature is a very important factor. But temperature, very important factor. For that reason, I need to consider the type of artificial lift which can be run good and well in high temperature. For an example, if I have a very high temperature, usually the artificial lift like a progressive cavity pump, while 50% of the downhole pump, it is a rubber elastomers. Rubber elastomers have so sensitivity to temperatures. Then I need not to consider this as a first priority. Also, ESP, electric submersible pump. Electric submersible pump, the motor is sensitive to the surrounding temperatures. For that reason, I need to have a cooling around the motor. When we start to design the motors and design the flow around the motor, I need to design the flow to pass around the motor with a certain velocity. Then the electric submersible pump here also, it's sensitive. Then it's come to the other artificial lift. I need to consider, for example, like a jet pumping system. But jet pumping system, what type of sealing I need to have? If a jet pump system can be run or not. A road lift system, usual road lift system, one of the best artificial lift system used for high temperature, like steam injection wells. But you know, the production here will be limited. Do I have a high production or just normal production? Is this production capable to lift by the road lift system? It's okay. If not, then what about jet pump? If the well condition completion is just suitable for the jet pump, I can run jet pumping system and so on. Or if there is a gas, if the well is good for gas lift, then the gas lift can be a best and so on. Temperature is, yes, temperature is a very critical. Pressure sometimes, we need to consider, but pressure, it's in most cases supporting and helping me. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gharib. We have another question. A student is asking, can you please repeat the advantage of having large annular area?
Yes, have large annular area for artificial lift, for pumping system, pumping wells. I need just my downhole pump to lift fluid, not gas. Then what I need to do with the gas? For the gas, I need the gas to vent in the annular area between the tubing and the casing, what you call the annulus. When I have a good annulus, good annular area, low wellhead pressure, then I have a very good gas efficiency, very venting, what you call venting efficiency. Then I reduce the volume of gas entering to the pump. Then I improved my downhole pump volumetric efficiency. This is what I am not sure if this is the answer or not.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Dr. Gharib. We have one other question.
Yes, go
A
ahead.
student is asking, is the semi-elliptical shaped rod better than the rounded since it reduces the amount of friction and weight?
Yes, it's good. It's I cannot say much better. It's good for sure, but remember the cost. Huh? Remember, if I don't need it, then I will be wasting for my cost. If I don't need it, because the operation, surface operation for elliptical rods is a little bit different than the operation for rounded rod. Then operating cost can be a little bit if I don't need it. Huh? I need elliptical rod and I use elliptical rod if I found it will helping me and supporting me just to reduce the downhole friction. If I not found it will help me and it's the same like the rounded rod, no, I go to the rounded rod. Like the continuous rod. If I start to compare continuous rod for my well with the standard rod and I found continuous rod not give me more advantage over my standard rod, then I don't need to use a continuous rod. Try to be as simple as possible downhole in your wells.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gharib. I think that's all for today. We are very much thankful for the well thoughtful and interesting lecture. It's been a pleasure to have you with us for many more sessions in the coming days. Until we meet again, please stay safe and healthy and have a great day.
Thank you, Hassan. Thanks for all of you. Thanks, you.